we have some time, around half an hour for discussion. I hope you will all engage in asking questions and bringing up topics for discussion. I would like to start maybe by focusing on the main actually theme of this session, which was considering the gender dimension in research to ensure quality and translation into innovation. And I have maybe just to start the discussion, I would like to know what particularly Londa thinks about who is going to set up the standards when we are talking you know, about introducing sex and gender analysis into research, because it looks to me that it is still very difficult to set up these standards, because many researchers are not really aware on how profoundly this aspect can influence the result. And then you say that Nature and Science will announce that they will consider these parameters into analyzing the quality of the research, but who is going to set up the standard? How do we do that?
I think we have to meet here again to set up the standards. So Science, the editor-in-chief of Science made it very clear to me that it depends on the quality of the research being done. They can look for it, but what can they do exactly? So Elizabeth, we're having a session on this, I think, right? This.
We're having interactive session tomorrow afternoon, yes, so we want feedback from people exactly for this, yes, so please do come.
Yeah, so I think that Joy was telling me, so I think Canada, the Institutes of Health Research have had this requirement for the longest time, and Joy was saying, Joy, did you want to say quickly what you're doing? Because I think that's interesting.
Hi there, my name's Joy Johnson, and I'm the Scientific Director for the Institute of Gender and Health at the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. So thanks, Londa. We've been requiring for several years, since 2012, that every researcher, no matter what area they're studying, and this is in the health field, integrate sex and gender in their work, or at least indicate whether they're doing so. So they have to answer 2 questions about sex and gender, and then indicate how they're integrating sex and gender, and if not, why not. And so what we've learned is that we've seen an increasing uptake of sex and gender among the people who are applying to CIHR. And these include people from basic scientists to people doing clinical studies to people doing population or public health. And so we're seeing an increased uptake, but we're still sometimes seeing the quality of the integration to be not as good as we'd like. People not really understanding what full integration of sex considerations in science might mean. So it's going to take a while, and I do think that structural change like this is important. Other things are going to be required as well, like training, and that's what Londa was talking about. This is a culture shift for all of us to be thinking about, and so training is going to be required. And I think through this process, new standards will begin to be set. So for example, even Jeff Mogul's study that shows the handler of an animal influences outcomes is really important, because I think we're going to start to see people having to report on handlers, or at least control for handlers of animals. And you know, Francis Collins at the NIH has said one of the biggest issues in science today is the replicability of our science. And part of the problem is that we haven't been reporting on these very important factors that ultimately are going to be essential. So training is going to be required, and I think through that process we will create new standards, new common standards.
Any question related to this topic? No, so we will create standards.
Yes,
in the way.
It's an ongoing process.
My name is Bente Knoll. I'm coming from Austria, and I just wonder if there are some experience you could change when it comes to research and innovation, not only in academia or in huge organizations that carrying out innovation and research, From my background, I'm a landscape planner, transport planner, and dealing with gender and diversity issues. And I've set up my own consulting business over 10 years ago, and I'm also working as a lecturer at universities in Austria. And I really appreciate the things going on. And Londa, thank you for your really marvelous presentation. And but when I look on all those gender and diversity research cycles and how it's possible to implement gender and diversity aspects in research and also in applied research, I think there is the specific needs of really small-scaled organizations is really missing. And I just wonder if that comes around in your job, or if you have thought about really small-scale innovative research that's carried out by really small-sized enterprises. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are several examples where small organizations, really Fab Labs, for example, really small groups are doing important research in a grassroots modus, something like this. For me, it's hard to describe how these organizations will have an impact in fundamental research at the moment. But I think they are important as an input-giving group for applied research. And I think, especially in the case of open innovation processes, this group is of interest. And when I remember the MoMA went to Berlin, to Prenzlauer Berg, a part in Berlin, and BMW was funding this MoMA experience, and the idea was to learn about mobility ideas of the citizens of Berlin. And they refused to give their ideas to BMW, but I'm absolutely sure they would be glad to share these ideas with a smaller organization which is really interested in their input and not belonging to a car company. I don't know if this is something very specific for Germany, but this was a result last year, and I think there is something in change at the moment, and for sure there is no clear idea how to take all this input into all these policies and research policies at the moment. Yes.
So if I could just add, I only did one case study that we're developing now. We have many case studies for engineering and transportation and climate change and urban planning. And what I would hope is that our methods scale to all users, to even small enterprises, because doing gender analysis in your case for landscape or space design for humans, it's a way of seeing, right? So we're trying to give you different ways of going about your question, whatever size you might be. But you should let me know if it works or not.
I was struck, as I shared with her informally, I was struck by Martina's description of the Discover Markets approach. And I drew some parallels to a relatively new program at the National Science Foundation with whom some of you may be familiar. That's called the I-Core program, the Innovation Core. And the focus of that is to help researchers at colleges and universities who have interest in taking their work across the valley of death, as is called. And this program has met with tremendous success, so much so that this relatively small program is being picked up by other agencies, other federal agencies in the US. But what struck me about Martina's point was that we need to engage users at early stages of the innovation process, at every stage. And to my knowledge, what we're currently doing with the NSF I-Corps program is sort of looking at what the proportion of women who are, the primary PIs of this award. But one of my take-home messages, one of the lessons learned, is that let's take a close look and consult with Martina about this Discover Markets approach. I think it would be mutually beneficial to us both, and perhaps she can come share with us some of their first-hand examples.
Yes, hello. I'm Ilan Shem from the Elsewhere Foundation, and I have a question for Londa about the nature and science endorsement of sex and gender elements in research, which is very exciting, and I wondered how deep that is. How developed are those guidelines? Because it could have really big implications for the publishing industry, but I think there's a whole education piece that has to happen there as well.
I think, so the European Commission is adding a training piece. If you answer a call and are awarded a call, you get some training. So this will be very important. If you can, in your company or institution, if you can have training workshops, this is a very important thing. I don't know what the guidelines are that Nature and Science are doing because we haven't seen them yet. But, as Isabel was asking, it has to do with the whole community. So we'll be establishing these norms, and it's going to be a process. And we can't jump to assume that people can do these things. We need to facilitate, to enhance things.
Yeah, we've been talking about grants from Horizon 2020, but getting published and embedding this in the peer review process and what that means on a really nuts and bolts level, yeah, I think a lot of work to be done there.
Commission is doing some interesting things because they've set up a gender expert group, and then these experts will go into each of the panel evaluations as more or less a resource person. So they're trying to seed the evaluation process with some expertise. I think it's a great idea. I'm sure we can come up with even more ways of doing it.
First of all, I want to say thank you for a brilliant panel. I enjoyed each one of the presentations, and I learned so much, and I feel like this knowledge needs to be really disseminated to people around the world who really are interested in making a difference, and this is really a movement that I think is very inspiring. Second, I wanted to ask about how do you envision the participation of men in these initiatives, because as we know, we have deans, rectors who are predominantly male, some of which are actively interested in being involved in some of these initiatives. Some may feel a bit left out because now we have all these research grants coming in and are very focused on including women. And I was just curious, how do you see us getting also men involved and on board with these initiatives?
I think the most important point is to find an entrance point where it's really important for the organization or the person. So for Nature and Science, for example, it's simply incredible that the sex of the animals isn't given. No person from physics would be allowed to describe an experiment without giving the temperature. So hard to understand that this is possible. And this is very convincing. And I think you have to look for a very specific case in your organization. And then it's quite easy to address.
Well, yeah, maybe we should ask some of the men in the audience. I think that Elizabeth has always done a great job in getting men leaders to come and talk to us. But gender's about everybody. And I didn't give the case study osteoporosis where the men are left out. Someone mentioned already today breast cancer where men have been left out of research. Okay, it's not a huge percentage, but people are dying. So gender is really about everyone. And I thought especially your slide about the gender and innovation, gender equality and innovation, this is the sort of thing that will bring everyone to the table. If your society is being more innovative because you have gender equality, that's going to bring everybody.
Yes, I just wanted to bridge to a question to Jolanta, because this gender equality index is quite interesting. As a, I don't know, it gives one figure that gives you immediately an image of what is happening. Did you find a correlation between the gender equality index and the participation of women in STE, sorry? Is there a correlation or?
Yeah, you see, participation of women in STEM is a part of index itself, so we didn't need to correlate, because in the area of employment, it's work. Okay. It's already integrated there in the general total figure. So it's a part of that, and also the numbers of also segregation, for example, where we clearly see where the women are more involved and men are more involved. This is also a part of index. And I would probably maybe like to also mention, if to go back a little bit to the topic of involvement of men, is within the Institute we're also developing an approach in actually how to get more men involved in the gender equality debates, and how to actually motivate them. But the work that we are mostly doing is more related with communication, awareness raising activities and campaigns and all that, because there's still, we have to acknowledge that there's still little knowledge in certain countries and societies about this, exactly the benefits that the gender equality brings to everybody. So it's not just about kind of to increasing numbers of women. It's actually for the benefit of everybody. It's for the benefit of institutions as well. It's for the benefit of economy. It's for the benefit of social and well-being of people. And sometimes we have lots of evidence. We have to find a way how to communicate them. We have to find a way how to work together. So it's not at all about excluding. It's very much about working together in cooperation, because then we all will benefit from that. And so this issue is very much on our agenda as well.
Hans had it. Oh, okay. Yes.
One of the major strengths that I see, and there are hands, we're going to go to the audience, our chairwoman will. One of the strengths that I see about this summit is that from its very inception, it has never been just about women. It's about using all of the talent to be brought to bear to strengthen the research process itself and to strengthen meeting the needs of the society. So I think that has permeated throughout all of the summits, and I'm sure will continue on in the future summits. Secondly, some examples that we have in the U.S. is with our institutional transformation program, the ADVANCE program, about which many of you are already quite familiar. And some of the key aspects, not only in incorporating gender, sex into the research content and process, which is unquestionably quite important, but insofar as recruiting talent, if you will, at every level in advancing this important scientific topic, some of the things that take place through the ADVANCE program is express awareness raising, training, and incentivizing of all of the participants, both in ADVANCE, NSF-funded ADVANCE institutions, but it has also generalized to non-NSF ADVANCE supported institutions, and bringing to bear the expertise and the perspectives of our male colleagues is just as important as introducing and bringing to bear those of of women too. So it's not just about a numbers or for women only.
Hans Borchgrevink from Research Council of Norway. I have a question for Londa, perhaps for more other people also. It says here in the Horizon 2020 brochure that proposal template, under concept and approach, applicants are asked the following question. Where relevant, describe how sex and/or gender analysis is taken into account in the project's content. And then it says, the present section does not apply to the European Research Council and to Marie Curie actions. And what's the question? The question is then, how does that relate to the lack of reporting gender issues which affects scientific quality. But because I think that this is taken into the rules here, because there should be nothing except scientific quality governing the selection in ERC and Marie Curie. But if you don't report gender issues and their gender dimension, then you may be very wrong.
Well, yes, I think Isabel should really, I think you're right. What we're seeing is that the sex and gender analysis is part of the excellence. That's what we're seeing. So Isabel will speak to the ERC.
Yes, I mean,
you can speak to the Marie Curie.
We all agree at the Scientific Council that we are looking for excellence in research, and part of the excellence is, of course, to take into account all the parameters, and gender and sex are some of these parameters. So it's true that we are confident that our evaluators are aware of this, and we are discussing now extensively how we can make sure that this is part of the evaluation of the quality of the research. So I think that's quite...
So therefore I think that it should not be an exception, as it is written now in the Horizon 2020. And well, I happen to be on the advisory expert group for Marie Curie, so I'm going to push it there.
Hi, my name is Abby Forson. I'm with the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you for a wonderful presentation by all presenters, and Londa for a fabulous job in always highlighting the importance of sex and gender. I'd like to echo the words of my boss, Dr. Joy Johnson, and by adding a footnote that when CIHR introduced the policy that asks applicants to indicate whether they're including sex and gender, it's been 3 years. And we've realized that, as Londa, you mentioned, researchers would need training, equally peer reviewers, because when the questions are answered and they get the proposal, a number of them don't understand why the questions are answered, and some of them don't know what to do with it. So I wanted to let folks know that the Institute of Gender and Health is taking a next step by developing training materials that will help researchers understand why it's important to include sex and gender and how they can do it in developing their research designs. And also to let peer reviewers know why it is important for them to keep a sex and gender lens when they're reviewing these proposals. Our training materials are going to be online-based, and we are hoping to have them ready by the end of the year or early next year. So stay in touch with us, and we'll share our materials with you.
I have a question to Jolanta, if I may. I'm Ludwika Leschita, professor from TU Dortmund in Germany. I really appreciate the Gender Equality Index. I think it's very user-friendly and very interesting. I've been working for 11 years in the Netherlands, University of Twente, and been a chair of female, I'm still am chair of female faculty network there. One of the striking features for the Dutch system is that the percentage of professors at the top level is one of the lowest in the whole Europe. And 60% of women work part-time in that country. So to see Netherlands as top 4 really performers when it comes to, gender, I'm a bit shocked. So I can imagine there are many other, intervening variables and all that. So I would then advise, when you will be thinking of R&D specifically, to be a bit careful how you're going to do that, because there are very specific things that can be very much opposite to what is there already at the moment.
Yeah, it's probably because of the time, it's not possible to go into all variables and indicators which are included in the index. And of course, yeah, if we take another composition of variables, then we probably have a different picture. But we thought about Netherlands a lot when we developed the domain of work, and instead of employment rate, we included full-time equivalent employment, and Netherlands dropped down very much because we know that the part-time employment is very prevalent there. So we thought of your country a lot, but I think, yes, to have a probably, in a way to be able to interpret the index properly, we have to go into the lowest level of variables to see what is included there and what actually is driving your country up or down. And for that reason, we developed country profiles. And if you go to our webpage, you will find also a very nice publication of country profiles where all scores for all countries at variable level is presented, even with some contextual information about the specific country. So what we are also promoting is that we think we developed a very nice methodology for the index, and we know that there are several countries which are planning already to replicate the methodology and to develop their national indices. I think countries would probably benefit even more from that. Yes, European Gender Equality Index is good. It's a good political thing, you know, because the countries, yes, are ranked, especially the countries that are in the bottom now, they a little bit feel this, you know, that they have to improve their situation, that they have to take certain measures, and but to have a national index would probably be more useful, because then you could, first of all, countries like yours have many more data on national level that you could use that. We had to rely on comparable, harmonized data for all EU 28, and this was a very, very big limitation, that we had to drop some very important variables because the data was not available for all countries. So to have something national, of course, would be much more useful probably, and much more than that. But to have a full picture, I would really invite you to explore it a little bit more in depth. So what we included there, why Netherlands is on the 4th place. But there is still a lot of room for improvement, even if you are there. I think none of the countries reached in 75 out of 100, so there is still a lot.
No, but that's my exact point. What I'm saying is that it's not performing that well as it looks like it is presented here when you talk about R&D, this particular sector. So as you were describing that in the future want to go by sector approach, then that's what I mean, that then fine-grained other type of variables might be very important not to be overlooked. Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's true. Thank you.
From the perspective of equality in regional participation, I'm from the Republic of Korea. My name is MJ Kim. I really enjoyed the enlightening and inspiring presentations from our 4 speakers in this session. Having served as the Minister of Environment and member of the National Assembly, I'm very much concerned with the relationship, interactive relationship between science and society, as the interface between science and society has been widening and deepening as time goes by. That being said, my question goes to Dr. Martina. My pronunciation is correct, Schroeder. I was wondering whether you could elaborate or articulate more on your approach or methodology for responsible research and innovation, not just in the dimension of gender equality, but in general perspective of social dimension.
The next step is to think about transformative innovation, with the meaning that you really have to integrate society when you want to change something, which is a big issue, where you have to take the whole society. So we have, for example, the new energy concepts in Germany, which is much more decentralized, as was mentioned already this morning. And when you do something like this, then you need another way of acceptance in society, because you have to change the whole behavior also. And then it's necessary not only to have this chance to decide yes or no at a very late time point, as I mentioned, then you really have to integrate the people in a real participative process during all the time. And real participation means in that case that it's really something with influence. So when it's only a nice to have, we have some processes like this since years now in Germany, and all the people who had been in that processes don't like them, and they tell it to the government because there's no chance to have influence. They were asked, they should give their opinion, but nothing happened with that opinion. So you have to define other ways, and we are looking at the moment for new solutions for this, and this is one way to do it. So the next step is really to go in that direction, yes.
So you are confident that your process or methodology is making justice as you originally planned?
I'm speaking about Discover Markets. This was a 3-year project, and we are now harvesting the first results. So we are going on with these ideas. We have some further ideas in that direction, which are quite close to funding agencies. So the idea is to really bring these ideas into the creation of new proposals. And I think we have to wait for the results. I can't give you the answer already now. Sorry for that. We just started. Or just, it's already 4 years old, but anyway.
Yes, thank you. My name is Arne Sauer. I'm an officer, a research officer for gender mainstreaming at the German Federal Environmental Agency. And I would like to thank, of course, all the presentators. But my question goes a bit to Ms. Reingarde, because I'm working in a research institution that does applied research for public policy making and program making. And I think this is this is a part of research that we haven't addressed yet here. And also in my doctoral research, I research gender impact assessment in those institutions. And my question is, how can we make gender and sex analysis not only a part of a good research framework, or it makes good research sense, but make it also part of a good governance framework, because we have a very, very strong equality case going for us in this kind of research environment. So I was wondering if you, on the level of maybe a national level, member states level, or even more direct, the European Commission and impact assessment level, whether there are any initiatives there to address this issue. Thank you.
Probably within the European Institute for Gender Equality, we have one of our focal areas of work is related to gender mainstreaming. I'm a part of another team which works on statistics and indicators in this, so I cannot actually probably tell you now, give a clear answer on that, because yeah, there are actually colleagues in the room that maybe we could. I could help you to get in touch with that, could provide you more information on that, but it's very, very relevant question, and we have been, recently we have completed a study on the institutional capacity to mainstream gender in institutions, and there was a very strong focus on gender impact assessment actually, and we had a very good overview on what actually happening in this area in different European countries. I know that we have some very interesting results for that, and so if it's, unfortunately I cannot address and give you very clear answer myself, as it's not exactly falls under my area of work, but I could actually help you to get in touch with the relevant people on that issue. Yeah.
Good. There are many hands coming up now. The gentleman at the end of the room.
Yeah, I came in too loud there. I'm Orlando Taylor from the United States. I was very pleased that Dr. Ward mentioned the intersectionality of gender with other factors, particularly race and ethnicity, which of course is a major topic in the United States and perhaps here in Europe as well, not only with regard to the inclusion of both genders in the workforce, but also in the content of the research that we do. The whole concept of intersectionality, of course, is very important in this conversation. I wonder if any of you from other on the panel might have some comments with respect to the inclusion of race and ethnic issues in research and work on gender here in Europe.
I think we also have the concept of diversity, no question, in Europe, and in Germany we had years of debate that the former persons responsible for women and then for equal opportunities are now responsible for diversity, but I think we really have a different situation than in the US. The question for ethnicity is really something, I remember quite well the workshop in Stanford when we met there, and there had been 2 persons from Germany, and in Germany you wouldn't do research in that case because of our history. So I think this is really something which is a combination of both. So on the one hand, we have a different situation in Europe, and on the other hand, we have a history in that case, especially in Germany. So hard to compare in that case.
Okay, I think we don't have time for more questions, but of course you can engage into discussion with any of the panel members. So we have to wrap up. And I think you will agree with me that this was a very exciting session, and where, in fact, it has been, from my perspective, interesting to see how society, which is made of more or less 50% women and men, has to be engaged into research and innovation, how the participation of women actually makes society better, and how we have all these different levels that we have to work on, from getting more participation of women to getting the dimension of gender in research and innovation. And with this, I would like to thank all the speakers in this session and close the session.